such an honor to be here, and I'm so grateful for Rachel for inviting me. So this is the title of my talk, Medicine for Loneliness and Social Isolation. High tech meets high touch, and I hope to convince you that caring for people of any age, older adults as well, requires science and humanity combined. And let me take a minute to tell you what I do. I'm a geriatrician. I take care of older adults, and I love it. Because it's high touch, I develop powerful relationships with families and patients over many, many years. You might have many diagnoses, but I'm interested in function. Despite multiple medical diagnoses, diabetes, hypertension, I want to know, can you do what matters most to you? And that's my job. Yes, I'm an internist. I'm good at diabetes, hypertension, insulin, all those things. But I cannot do my job if I'm not aware of the social situation of my patients. And when people ask me, what's the worst disease you treat? I say loneliness. It is by far and away the most heartbreaking and difficult thing. It causes suffering as bad as any medical illness. So business is good for us geriatricians. Here's life expectancy over the last 600 or 700 years. Stayed till about age 30 until the late 1800s when sanitation came into effect. We decided that it's probably not a good idea to get your water from where you go to the bathroom. And then in the mid-1900s, it's medicine. It's medicine that produced extraordinary life expectancy, where you would have died from a heart attack. Now someone puts a piece of rigatoni in one of your arteries, whereas you would have died from colon cancer. You get a colonoscopy and that's detected. And so you survive long enough to meet me with an entirely different set of problems. So these advances in medicine are sort of paradoxical. There are new problems that need new solutions. People live longer, but with mobility and other impairments. And that's as pyrrhic a victory as a 40-year-old woman dying of breast cancer. There could be cognitive impairment that could lead to you missing medications, making poor financial decisions, safety issues. Worried caregivers, including adult children and spouses who may not live nearby. And then once again, I will always harp on loneliness and social isolation. So my topic today is high tech meets high touch. I'm going to give you 3 examples, both from biology and from digital technology. We've heard a bit about AI. I'll give you some very specific examples that come from my group at Cornell. Geroscience, the development of new drugs that not only increase lifespan, simply a number, and health span, how long you can live doing everything you want to do. And I will not be done until health span equals lifespan. The idea is to be functional to the last day of your life. Virtual reality that can be used to treat loneliness. I'll show you some mind-blowing stuff, how we're using this to treat homebound patients. And I'll talk a little bit about AI with some very specific examples and how it can be a decision aid for older people having to make medical or financial decisions. But before I go to that, I must answer the most common question I'm asked, which is, how old is your oldest patient? And here she is. She's Helen Happy Reichert. She passed away a few years back at 109. I'd asked her, I said, Helen, who was the first president you voted for? And she said, well, I wanted to vote for Harding, but I couldn't. And I said, well, what was it about the political leanings of President Harding? She said, Mark, you don't understand. I wasn't allowed to vote. There was suffrage. I mean, can you imagine seeing, and she died just after Obama was elected. So she wanted to see a woman president, and she never got to see that. So multiple choice question. What was her secret? Copious red wine consumption, 500 calories a day, genetics, a large social network, or 2 of the above? Anybody? 2 of the above. Yeah, she had a genetic component to this that I'll talk about, and an enormous social network. She became somewhat of a celebrity because of her longevity. So she was a combination of nature and nurture. She was a graduate of my university, Cornell. There she is in the Cornell apple orchards. There she is meeting former Governor Patterson. I said, Helen, you met the governor. What did you tell him? She said, I told him he was the worst governor in my lifetime. Because when you're 109, you can say whatever you want, right? this is the news. We thought this was tree hugging before COVID. A gajillion studies have shown that having a larger and robust social network is an independent predictor of longer survival, okay? So on the y-axis, survival, everybody's alive at 100% at year one, going out 15 years. Each of those lines, as they get darker, represent more and more friends, and the more friends you have, the longer you live, okay? And this has been shown in many, many, many studies. So let's talk about the nature part of this. Helen had a longevity gene called sirtuin-1, okay? We're in the Jewish Museum, and this is common in Ashkenazi Jews. We all have it, but she had it in multiple copies. And what's amazing about this is this gene confers not only a very long life, it confers it without disability, okay? To make my case, let me introduce you to another patient, her brother, also my patient. Irving Kahn was trading stocks until age 109. He died a couple of weeks before. And there's this third sibling who lived to 105, okay? Just remarkable, and what an honor to care for this family. Well, it turns out that for these lucky folks, the usual rules do not apply. Less than 10% are vegetarians. They're not especially active. Helen used to say to me, I've never seen the inside of a gym in my life. A variety of not so great habits. At 101, she said, Mark, I'm taking up smoking again. And I said, Helen, I don't think that's a good idea. She said, Mark, you know, I've outlived several of my primary care physicians. I plan to outlive you. And, you know, she would miss appointments, like constantly. And when you're 108-year-old misses appointments, you get a little nervous, okay? She would be at the bar at Tao, drinking martinis. I mean, just an amazing person. So this is geroscience. This is my biologic section. We now understand, this is within the last 10 years, the basic biology of aging. And as such, we are developing targets of aging. These are places on DNA and other proteins where we might be able to amplify longevity genes. And the earliest drugs mimic caloric restriction. And if you haven't heard about caloric restriction, I'll say a few words about this. This is a study in rhesus monkeys. Rhesus monkeys live to about age 13, 14 on average. And when you severely calorically restrict these animals, the red line is the normal diet, the blue line is the calorically restricted diet, and you can see going out to 15 years, there's a 2-year survival difference. And not only is there a difference, there's a difference in health span as well. They remain more functional until the end of life. And it turns out that there is this fascinating relationship between obesity and aging. Caloric restriction extends lifespan in worms, mice, primates, including humans. Obesity creates cellular changes similar to that to aging. It also creates appearance differences. If you've seen someone who's 30 and 50 pounds overweight, you might think they're 50 until they've lost weight. And this is true within the biology of us. Restoring ideal body weight restores the processes that aging accelerates. Weight loss lowers your risk for stroke and heart disease. It can fix sleep apnea. It reduces arthritis risk. It can reverse the onset of adult onset diabetes. So it's quite remarkable. And the first drug that's being tested to treat aging, if you will, is a drug called metformin, a drug that's been used for diabetes for many, many years, since the 1960s in France. It is a mild weight loss drug. It is generic. It costs pennies a pill, so the drug industry is not particularly interested in it. And in mice, it does a bunch of great things. It preserves weight, it reduces cataract development, it improves general fitness, it lowers your cholesterol, it shifts your gene expression to look like younger gene expression. It treats inflammation. And again, it increases both lifespan and health span. It appears to mimic caloric restriction. And while we're on the topic of obesity, it looks like drugs like Ozempic probably do too. There are people who do not lose weight with Ozempic, but have benefits in cardiovascular and renal disease. So stay tuned. So let me tell you about the TAME trial, which is pretty darn exciting. Stands for Targeting Aging with Metformin. You can Google it. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal very recently. And this involves 3,000 people over the age of 65. It's a randomized trial, 1,500 milligrams of metformin or a placebo. They had to make a placebo to look like the metformin. The placebo costs more than the metformin. I'm quite serious, to make them look alike. Double-blinded subjects, subjects and researchers, and they're studying a bunch of outcomes, including the onset of chronic diseases. Stay tuned, we'll have data in the next 3 years, 4 years. And many geoscientists are not waiting for the results of that trial. I know many people taking metformin without diabetes or an indication, given in many longevity clinics. Very few contraindications, really kidney disease. Some people get a little bit nauseous, but I never thought I'd say this, but I think in 10 years, you will get a medication at your physician's like Lipitor or aspirin that will not stop aging, not reverse aging, but will influence aging, so that you'll develop Alzheimer's disease 10 years later. And imagine the decreased cost of care that will result from that. It's a real boon. Okay, now let's move to technology to relieve loneliness and social isolation, from bioscience to digital science. So you've heard about this all throughout the day. Our Surgeon General's report. How common is the lack of social connection in the US? About 1 in 3 adults in the US feel lonely, and about 1 in 4 feel they lack emotional support. Do people know the difference between loneliness and social isolation? Have we talked about that at all? Loneliness is a subjective experience, okay? Social isolation is measured, it's a number. How many people do you see every day? How many do you talk to? So there are many people who have lots of folks in their social network, but still feel lonely because of the quality of those connections. Conversely, there are people who have just a few folks, but who are very close to them, who are not lonely, but they're somewhat correlated. And here are the negative health effects. The dark blue is people who are not lonely. The light blue are people who aren't. Sleep disorders, 24% in people who are isolated, 14%, I'm sorry, who are not isolated, 14% in people who are. Same for weight problems, substance abuse, neurologic disorders. There's data now that loneliness is an independent risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, kidney or urologic problems. And you've heard, I think Beth quoted earlier, that it's like smoking 15 cigarettes a day or having a sedentary lifestyle. And loneliness as we age has very special considerations. People lose friends, they lose loved ones. Children may not live locally. I had the blessing of growing up in a multi-generational family with grandparents. Mobility can limit the ability to socialize. You can't get to the restaurant or to the social event. People have to stop driving. One of the reasons I like working in New York, I don't have to take away car keys the way I did in Connecticut. Hearing loss can limit your ability to interact. There's no one to take you to the doctor or even in your environment to see that you're getting sick, so you present for medical care when you're in extremis, when you're sicker. There's no one to bounce ideas off of. You know, should I make this financial investment? Should I pick this Medicare supplement plan? And so you make bad decisions. And there's the stereotype that there's an inability to access or capably use the internet. I like this little cartoon of the stereotype. Tracking my cookies, they'll never get my recipe. And the problem with technology, and the last group spoke to this, is that technology for older people has been designed by 20-year-olds and 25-year-olds who think they know what grandma would want. We at Cornell, we bring older people into the design process. Archel sat in yesterday on a session where we do this with my faculty. So I want to talk first about VR. There's enormous potential in aging with VR for cognitive engagement and leisure activities. I'll show you in a minute how we've used it for social support. It's also being used in a study we're doing now around physical rehabilitation and stroke, where you can do it at home, not have to go to a physical therapy place and do all of these things virtually. So this is a social VR pilot we did at Cornell, in which we took homebound older adults who had not been out for a decade, I mean, interacted with nobody, and they were in different parts of the country. In this study, one was at the University of Florida in Tallahassee, another was up north there in Ithaca, and we paired them together. And here they are walking together through the Duomo in Italy. They're talking to each other, they can see each other, and they're interacting. And when we studied these folks, it produced enormous decrease in anxiety. They're taking a balloon ride here together as avatars. High social presence, high enjoyment, high engagement, a willingness to reconnect. Many of these people became friends in the non-virtual world afterwards. They exchanged phone numbers. Again, these were people who were homebound for a decade. Here they are making a little scrapbook picture wall at the end of this. By the way, a very low rate of cyber sickness, none actually, so that people weren't dizzy because of the way we designed the project. We used gerontologic principles in the design, not like younger person's gaming headsets. I want to talk a little bit about AI now, and now I'm going to give you some specific examples. The last panel just teed this up beautifully for me. We think that AI, again, if it's designed with older people in mind, can really help older people and support decision-making. We call this supported decision-making. So we know that rates of memory loss and cognitive ability increase with age, even in the absence of a dementia. Older adults are faced with many, many complex health and financial decisions with very, very serious implications, and often with very significant immediacy around a medical decision or a procedure. And the impact of making a bad decision is much higher in older people than younger people. The best example is financial scams and poor investments. I mean, if you make a bad investment in your 50s, you have a lifetime of retirement to try and recover that with a long investment horizon. But in fact, when you get older, you do not, and it could be devastating. Information is often presented to older adults in a way that's not consistent with their abilities. I got a can of soup off the shelf the other day, and I couldn't read it, and I said, my eyes are going bad, and then I realized it was in Times Roman 2, okay? And it's not, I had the disability. This Campbell's decided to print a label that I couldn't read. Fonts may be the wrong size, there may be hearing impairment. Changing in the aging brain makes people more vulnerable, again, in the absence of a neurologic disease, to making bad decisions. And in aging psychology, we call this the paradox of too many choices. Now I'll reveal to you, I have a particular condition. It's called diner menu-induced panic attack. Are any of you vulnerable to this particular disease? All right, so you go into the diner, you're hungry, okay? And they hand you a spiral-bound 20-page menu, and I can't take it, okay? And then my wife orders something, and then I say, oh, I wanted to have that. And she says, and you can. I didn't order the last one. And that's a fear of missing out or FOMO. But it turns out that when you're presented with multiple choices, as we do in America, many brands of jam and peanut butter, you make poor choices, and that problem accelerates as people age. Let me contrast this with my favorite restaurant in the world, Les Papilles in Paris. If you take a picture of this, and if you haven't gone, you need to go, okay? This is a restaurant in which there is one thing on the menu every night, and if you don't like it, too bad, okay? And it's always fabulous, okay? You get a soup, a simple dish, braised meat accompanied by vegetables or potatoes, a panna cotta for dessert, and maybe some cheese if we have some, okay? The only thing they have a fabulous selection of is wine, okay? And I love going here because it's the opposite of the diner menu. And you see this problem played out in older adults with the paradox of choice. This is an article from the Times on the left. Older people need rides. Why aren't they using Uber and Lyft? It's because Uber's unusable. Do I want a black car, a green car, a white car? Do I want to, what's the air conditioning temperature? Do you want to wait? Do you not want to wait? And so people are avoiding this because that app was developed for young people. Fresh Direct or Instacart, okay? Which of these 29 peanut butters do you want, okay? My patients say to me, I need eggs, milk, and bread, okay? And that's the way we design for older people. Now let me show you the most complex menu of all. Are you familiar with this document? I just turned 65 and they mailed this to me. I did not understand it, and I teach it, okay? I'm a geriatrician, okay? And I want to give you an example of how AI can sort of help us. This is a study that we did in my group, looking at 5 different AI companions, okay? And 4 actually, and compared them to actual human beings with Medicare questions. And very quickly, the colored bars are a series of questions we asked them. Simple questions like, I lost my Medicare card, what do I do? To things like, does Medicare support hearing aids? Tell me about Medicare Advantage. And the Medicare beneficiaries, with the exception of Google Assistant, did okay. But Bard, a Google product, by the way, I don't know if Peter's still here, ChatGPT, Alexa did okay, but they did much better than the Medicare beneficiaries in answering these questions. We then fashioned simple queries in my investigative group for these different chatbots. We asked questions like, what is long-term care insurance? A simple question. An intermediate question, what are the pros and cons of long-term care insurance? A complex question, what is the average annual premium for long-term care insurance for a 60-year-old woman? Here's what Alexa said. Many long-term care insurance policies will pay for your care if you have severe cognitive impairments such as dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or long-term memory loss or poor judgment of safe or unsafe situations. Then we asked another chatbot the same question. This was Bard. And you see the complexity, and you see how this might be unusable for older people. We then began giving different prompts. You know, you can ask ChatGPT to say, explain Alzheimer's disease to me as if I'm a neuroscientist. Now explain it to me as if I'm in the 5th grade, okay? Does long-term care insurance cover dementia? After a simplification, this is what we got. Yes, speak with your, so you see the complexities of this and how prompts are given. Now, gets even more interesting. This is a study we looked at asking how you used ChatGPT for medical advice. And we asked a couple of questions. This is another group, actually. Would you use ChatGPT to self-diagnose? 78% of people said yes, okay? Have you entered symptoms into ChatGPT? 52% of people said yes, okay? And these are mostly older adults, which is kind of amazing. Maybe you don't go to the doctor, but there is a problem. Look at these studies. ChatGPT's exam performance was worse than that of medical students in a parasitology test, demonstrating its limitations in both knowledge and explanatory quality. ChatGPT achieved only moderate passing performance on the US medical licensing exam. ChatGPT failed to achieve a passing score on the Chinese medical examination. ChatGPT failed the American Heart Association basic life support and advanced life support system. So that's quite disturbing, because that's where older people are going for information, because the information is coming from the internet. That's what's being mined. And there's some other problems. Are you familiar with AI hallucinations? Well, this is my favorite one. AI hallucination is a phenomenon wherein an engine perceives patterns or objects that are non-existent or imperceptible to human observers, creating inputs that are nonsensical or altogether inaccurate. So I asked ChatGPT, how many hours are spent plotting revenge? It came back and said, according to a 2013 study published in the Journal of the American Psychology, people spend about 80% of their waking hours plotting revenge. It got this paper from The Onion. It could not differentiate a credible source. My colleague Wally Boot, who's an AI genius, maybe you'll have him come talk next year, last week asked ChatGPT, tell me about Dr. Walter Boot. And it said Dr. Walter is an eminent psychologist who has expertise in virtual reality and AI. He is the recipient of the 2013 Kensington Prize from the American Psychological Association. And Wally said, I don't remember that award, okay? And he went and looked it up, and it turns out it does not exist, okay? And so it fashioned a very legitimate sounding explanation for him. So you see the problem if you're using this to effectively get medical information. But AI is improving, and this is what I wanted to point out. Even going from Chat 3.5 to ChatGPT 4, now it is scored equivalently on resident physicians on the internal medicine boards. So it's getting better and better and changing. The issue is, what information is this being based on? So we're creating now an AI program that will help you pick a Medicare Advantage program, so you don't have to rely on those people at night, right, who sell you Medicare Advantage with a free pickleball racket, right, and right? Do you know who these people are? The icons of my childhood. I don't even want to besmirch such a beautiful day. I'll give you their initials. Joe Namath and William Shatner, actually. I mean, come on, Captain Kirk, what are you doing? So I just want to finally talk a little bit about the ability of AI to help us age in place. This is kind of amazing. Early detection of cognitive problems. AI can see how we interact with technology, how we use cell phones, television remote controls, and enable detection of cognitive impairment from acute or chronic illnesses before family or friends notice. I just spoke to folks at Comcast. They're developing an AI, they're developing an aging in place division within a cable company, okay? You can put sensors in someone's home, in a hallway, and it will learn how long it typically takes for you to traverse that 10 or 20 feet. And when you become ill, acutely or chronically, it can see that something's changing and alert your child or your physician, okay? Amazing. Just-in-time support for older adults. It can predict when medication non-adherence is going to occur. Anybody use like Round for when to take their meds, or those apps, right? I see heads shaking up and down. Well, if I'm in the car, that's no use, but they're now creating systems that geolocate where you are, and it waits to give you the prompt until you get home. And then there's remote sensing at home. AI can learn the mobility and living patterns of older adults and alert family when there's trouble. I have a patient, several patients now at home, with sensors placed around their home, not cameras. And every morning I get an email if the refrigerator hasn't opened by 11 o'clock, if the door hasn't opened, if the person hasn't gotten out of bed, if there were no bathroom trips, the temperature of the apartment. That was a person who wanted his privacy and his dignity. The family wanted to have a home health attendant, okay? Home health attendant, $35 an hour. The monitoring system, $19 a month. Amazing, amazing. However, it went off one morning, there was no activity, and they rushed over there, only to find that he was at his girlfriend's apartment, actually. And there was a lot of motion at that apartment, I promise you. Okay. So here's an example of the way motion sensors are set up around the home, mobility aids, no cameras, sensing devices, the temperature, just incredible. And these are the kinds of feedback that you get on a wellness dashboard every morning. Current activity, historical activity, how many people did you see, what was your geoperimeter, how far did you venture out into the world? Remarkable number of companies entering into this market, and it's being designed with the older person in mind. This audience is, well, you'd all be in the newborn nursery where I work, but you're pretty young, and I want to make the case to you as I wind down here that the way we think about aging, even in early midlife, has tremendous effects on longevity. I have a wonderful colleague at Yale named Becca Levy, who's a psychologist, and she's been studying people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s about attitudes within aging for many years now, and she has an attitudinal questionnaire that she gives every year to older people. Sample questions, as you become older, you become less useful. It's normal to become disabled as you age. Things keep getting worse as I get older. And she follows the half glass full people and the half glass empty people for years. And hold on to your hats, here's the results. The upper line is high perceptions of aging. The lower line is low perceptions of aging. On the left is survival, everybody's alive at the beginning. And going out 22 years, there's a 7-year difference in life expectancy. Adjusted for chronic diseases, age, medications, genetics, hypertension, depression, dementia. Your perceptions about aging will influence how long you live, okay? And if you think they have nothing to do with that, you might just want to change your attitude. So what I would say in closing is, look, I know that aging is hard. I'm not Pollyannish. Aging brings losses. Aging brings, all kinds of challenges. But there's some amazing data about aging. Marriages that survive into late life have the highest marital quality. Have you seen the data on happiness? Happiness peaks in your early 20s. You have children, and it drops precipitously. It recovers in your 60s and continues to rise even in the face of chronic illness, okay? Amazing. So there's a lot to look forward to. So I collect quotes about aging. My faculty know about this, and I want to end with my favorite one. It's from the American humorist Will Rogers. He said, "One must wait until evening to realize how splendid the day has been." Thank you very much. I can answer a question or two, but again, by the way, I don't read books from back to front, but if I did, I would do it at the Jewish Museum. If you don't get that joke, ask a Jewish person next to you, okay? Yes, go ahead.
So, great presentation.
Thank you.
And I particularly like the progress that's being made in AI. My question is, if you're using that now with 4.0, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great to just take that and then send a question to your endocrinologist or anybody else, such as, can I take metformin with Zepbound? After you do the research, take it and then verify it.
Oh, you are great. I mean, you must have slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night. That is a great question. So that's exactly what's happening. We're doing a study right now around prostate cancer. So when men have an elevated PSA, it is an incredibly difficult decision with 800 possible ideas. And so the night before they see the urologist for the first time with this elevated PSA, they read everything on the internet, half of which is a sewer, okay? And they come with 8,000 pages of printouts that make the visit useless. We've created a chatbot based on high quality information that arms them before they go. Everybody's happier, everybody gets better information. That's called decision support. You have to involve older people in the design of these projects. Great question. And yes, and back. I think rapamycin, another drug, another senolytic like metformin being tested. I think there are many better drugs that are on the horizon. Fluoxetine, which is a flavonoid, probably safer. The pharmaceutical industry is investing deeply in this. And I think metformin is now prescribed, approved, and I take metformin. And I'm 98 years old. No, I'm only kidding. So I don't think the data's there yet. The data on metformin every day accrues. COVID, 10 studies now looking at diabetics who are hospitalized who died of COVID. Those who took insulin had much higher rates of death, those who happen to be taking metformin for their diabetes. When you immunize someone, say against flu vaccine, and you give them metformin beforehand, you have a much higher immunologic antibody response. So it seems to act in a whole number of ways. And the safety record is, there's 50 years of safety records, and it's pennies a pill. So I'd hold off on the rapamycin. I think the data on metformin is better. But ask your doctor. Please wrap it up. Okay, I'm being bullied. Anybody else? One more? Thank you so much, everyone. An honor to be here.